Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is Edna J. White. I'm so glad to be here today, and I wanted to stop by just to give you I guess, some tips on one of the subjects we've been talking about in my group, Wounded to Wonderful, um, is how to break generational curses. And so I've been asked this question a couple times, and I know that a lot of people have heard it perceived through the church or the religious aspect of it. But I wanted more than that because I wanted it to be broad, and I wanted to be able to cover the masses to understand what generational curses or patterns or behaviors were. So I wanted to share today with just some simple tips that to begin, because I know the road is going to be very long, and it's not something that everybody undertakes or wants to undertake very easily. Um, so what is generational patterns or generational trauma patterns? Um, it's just a cycle of behavior, some thinking and coping that was inherited from parents, and the parents got it from the ancestors, and the ancestors got it from the guardians. And then it kind of spilled over in childhood environment. And that's how we deal, or we actually perceive what is going on from that trauma. So it's just a cycle of behaviors that we've adapted along the way because of whatever was going along or what was happening in our environment. And some things that my parents have passed down, sort of like a recipe. How about that? Sort of like a recipe that your great grandmother gave to your grandmother, your grandmother gave it to your mother, and then your mother gave it to you. And even though it may have been loaded with things that weren't good for you, you still cooked it. So it's sort of like that. Okay. So every family has a unique way of what they do, things that they do. Some of the unique ways of behaving, thinking, and coping are unhealthy and causes issues in our lives. When a child grows up in a home with dysfunction, they learn bad patterns. This is how generational problems are passed on. So you get how that happens. It's something that could be just like overseen. You're not even thinking about, and it gets passed on. So it actually is enveloped, embraced in childhood. Every family has a unique way of doing their things. So, but everyone does not have a unique way of breaking the cycle of toxicity and dysfunctional behaviors is a commitment that many people are not brave enough to start or strong enough to finish. It often feels impossible because I've done it. I am actually breaking those chains and those habits now in my life as an adult, and often seems impossible, and it often comes back up, and you sometimes you struggle with it, but it's almost like trying to break a chain, like a real chain with your hands. And it can be difficult, but if you keep at it, you can eventually bend the material. But if you start this journey, you won't regret it. I promise you, you won't regret it, because this cycle, breaking this cycle, is a banner of love for many people, for many generations to come. For many, my grandchildren would benefit. My sons and my daughter will benefit from me healing some of these patterns, apologizing for some of the things that I've done over the years that I didn't know that I was doing because of the dysfunctionality. So that's another thing that we have to understand. We have to go back and apologize, because we apologize to ourselves first for not knowing any better. Then we apologize to our children or grandchildren for giving them or continuing the cycle that you choose right now to stop. So you have to apologize, you have to make right, because that's like love. Forgiveness is love. It's the way that we release this love into the world. Forgiveness, asking for forgiveness. So how does those bad coping mechanisms cause generational patterns? Okay, so let's think about that. Strategies to deal with emotions are called coping mechanisms. So let's think of a child. If my grandson says to me when he was 3, I want such and such, and I gave it to him, and I repeatedly did that, and he asked for the same thing over and over again, then one day I say no because I realize that it's not good for him, or I don't have it. That child then has a temper tantrum or a tantrum, and because he gets emotional and he's like, what's going on here? I usually get what I want, and kind of falls out, acts up, gets mad, throws things, whatever the case may be, kicks his feet. That's a coping mechanism for anger because he's not used to not having what he's asked for so many times. So a coping mechanism are used to deal with negative emotions such as pain, anger, jealousy, and sadness. For instance, somebody getting angry and all of a sudden you punch a wall. That's unhealthy. That's an unhealthy strategy to release anger. Unhealthy. Punching walls, you spend more money patching walls than you would, you know, actually creating a healthy path for your anger. Because anger is a second emotion, but it is an emotion that you should be displaying, but productively and effectively, not unhealthy. Okay? So, an individual that releases their anger poorly did not learn how to cope or to manage their emotions in a healthy way. Difficult moments and emotions are part of life. They really, really are. And so, when an individual didn't learn to deal with the pain, they crumble under pressure, and then it's all hard times and it's all downhill after that. Dealing with a situation with unhealthy coping mechanisms may take a problem to another level. Let's just say, if you never learn to communicate, and then when you're asked to communicate properly, you may get a passive aggressive answer, like, yeah, but no, no, but yeah. Or you may get a too far over the edge, like, you'll do whatever you want, or I said do this. So you might have a gambit of all those answers if you're not dealing with a situation properly, but you're coping with it. People with unhealthy coping mechanisms see the world as hostile, that everything is hostile. A child does not see things as hostile. They just see things as the way they are. And then when they don't get their way, they manage it by acting out for something that they've seen before or that they've experienced, and or that gets an answer for them. They continue to be the same way. Um, so coping mechanisms work for practical things such as money management as well. Um, I know for me, learning about money in my family and debt was a very, very difficult thing to deal with. Um, from coming from lack and not having, my parent bought extravagantly all the time and didn't take care of the necessities, which were light bills, the rent, the mortgage, important things. Those things were not priority because they were coping out of lack. And that affected money management. And then it handed down to me when I saw it. I said I would never, never want to have these issues. I always don't want to owe anybody. I always don't want to, worry about money. I always don't want to hold anybody's money. And for many years, up till I think about age 40, I never wanted to handle, hold money, deal with money, um, because I felt it was dirty and it would give me the wrong mindset that I would not have the priorities that I needed to. But of course, eventually, I had to change that thinking and I had to move on and reprogram my thought patterns, feel money, take care of money, and be close with money because that was an energy and it wasn't what I was supposed to be doing. So I learned to recope and I learned to actually get better at money management. Ultimately, every family has their problems and trials and tribulations. Um, the way your family deals with it, it teaches a child how to deal with it in the future as well. Um, my granddaughter loves unicorns, and there are some children who are unicorns who are very aware of generational obstacles and fight to avoid the cycle. As myself, I fought and I really struggled and I really wrestled. And I didn't struggle, I wrestled with trying to break the habit, trying to break the cycle, being someone who wouldn't lie, being someone who had um, the best of everyone in view, being that one that really worked on not being poor, getting out of the poor cycle, mind, body, spirit, and business, getting out of that poor cycle, not saying I'm poor, relanguaging, repositioning myself. I became the unicorn of my family, and began to walk right and teach my other family members, my children, how to walk upright and differently, in order to circumvent all of this. So eventually you'll get to know this. If you really want to grab on to escaping from these dysfunctions or these curses, you will really become honest with yourself. And the first thing is to do is be grateful for those um, ancestors and for those who came before us. I'm grateful for them. I'm grateful for my mother. I'm grateful for my grandmother, my great grandmother. I'm grateful for all of the ancestors that sat before me, that brought, families and um, guardians before me. I'm grateful for that. But I'm also aware that everything was not peachy and was not great. Um, and I also knew that there was dysfunctional patterns that I had to, in order for me to make it better for the next generation, I had to organize. I had to get those truths in my life so that I can own my life, so I can own having friendships, so I can own my problems, own my insecurities, so I can see the world differently and shape it the way that it's supposed to be shaped for me, because my life was not my mom's life. My life is not was not my grandmother's or my great grandmother's life. It was my life, and I had to recreate and nurture that part of me. So going back to nurturing yourself and learning how to nurture your child all over again, when you start to deal with these dysfunctional patterns and these hard moments and these very difficult situations, you will start to see that these ideals and these, I guess, views of someone else has really made your situation a little bit worse. So you will begin to grow from that particular point in your life. So how do you move forward? How do you get better than that? How do you begin to break that generational pattern? Well, Like I said, the first thing is to have that understanding that you have gratitude for your families, and then you forgive yourself for not knowing um, that these patterns were not healthy, and then allowing yourself now to reprogram, reposition, and relanguage your life. Pay attention to your emotions and your behaviors. Internal reflections and introspections are key. If you see the problem, you can fix the problem. If you know the problem, you can do something about it. The quickest way to monitor yourself is track your patterns. I like to journal. Some people like to audio log. Some people like to vlog. However you want to do it, do it. If you feel that you want to meditate, commune with God or goddess, or you even want to go see a therapist, that's what you need to do. You need to break the generational curse, but you need to be aware of it and you need to be doing something actively to change it. Because sometimes, even knowing it, you don't know how to change it until you get the proper tools to do that. So getting the proper tools, reading about your emotions, how to work with them, or even seeking therapy will change that dynamic for you. Just a few tools will change your whole dynamic on how to empower yourself to a better relationship, to a better family, to better love. Okay? And so, what patterns? You got to realize what patterns your family has. Um, did something happen in your family like addiction, divorce, abuse, passive aggressive behavior, controlling, manipulation, gossip, jealousy, pride, victim mentality, defeatism, perfectionism, loneliness, cynicism, especially negativity, anger, unforgiveness, single parenthood, all of that. You have to identify the concern in your family. And then you'll know that you're onto something because once you say, okay, single parenthood, well, that's a whole generational curse altogether. What do I do with that? It's not supposed to be that way. And then if it is that way, how do I make that correct? That we co-parent efficiently, effectively. How do we do that? These are questions that you're asking yourself so you can start the healing journey by asking those hard questions and taking a moment um, to really dive into why I want to change these things. I do have a list of questions you ask yourself and how you change those coping patterns. If you're interested in getting a copy of it, all you got to do is look down in the comment box below, email me, and ask me for the strategy questions for overcoming or defeating these behaviors. So just you can email me for those because there's a lot of them. There's a lot of questions you can ask yourself to kind of unload those things. And then that's really what it takes is just to be able to start somewhere, start the healing journey somewhere. Those are small steps. But if you take 20 minutes a day, I promise you that just taking that 20 minutes and work on breaking the generational curses and making that your mantra for the month, you will go far. You will be able to have revealed a lot of things that are really like moving around inside of you that you need to handle because those generational curses affect your life as an adult, your relationships, your money management, your eating habits. It affects choices you make. It affects um, the way you view things for yourself. It affects a whole lot. All I'm saying is give yourself the time and the permission to heal. This is Edna J. White. Thank you so much for joining me today. Remember to look for me on Facebook. I have Wounded to Wonderful Facebook group that is a life coaching page. I will post that down on the comments section. I also am available at EJW Coaching for Life, and I will be around. If you have any questions, feel free to look for me. Have a great day, and I hope that you live in peace, not in pieces.